New drone technologies as well as the changing face of drone warfare are key issues at present when it comes to European defense capabilities. To discuss these, we are now joined by Ole Kværnø, the director for the new Centre for Drone Technologies. Thank you so much for making the time to speak with us. I would like to start off with the current state of play when it comes to European capabilities. In your assessment, are Europeans prepared for the warfare that Russia is currently waging in Ukraine? And if so, to what extent are we prepared?
Well, the short answer is no, we are not prepared. Ukraine is absolutely ahead of us in any sense, and so is Russia. And that's for the very good reason that Ukraine started 4 years ago with barely no drone technology whatsoever. And now we are throwing out, I guess, between 60 and 70,000 drones each month. And drones are simply dominating the contact line at the moment. So, and we are not only behind in terms of developing our defense capabilities, we're also behind in terms of defending our critical national, or protecting our critical national infrastructure.
And do you think that the Europeans are actually in a position to pick up pace effectively? We hear oftentimes conversations about the potential drone technologies which are being developed, but also the investments which are being made by Europeans, whether it be part of the EU's funding, for example, for defense, or whether it be their own innovations and national investment. But comparatively to other countries, are we in a position to potentially develop those capabilities in time, or is the bureaucracy still a huge issue?
Well, both bureaucracy is a huge issue, and we have, as you say, our funding mechanisms, they lack agility and speed. So we can do it, but we need to pick up, we need to get our act together to actually do it. If you look at how we fund innovation and research, we tend to either fund long programs through the European Defense Fund or Horizon Europe programs through the EU, or we fund it in the higher readiness levels between suppliers and end users at the very high readiness levels. That little innovation cycle, that runs smoothly. But we are used to having 3 to 5 to 8 year programs to develop new technologies at the European programs. And that is just not good enough. The intermediate gap, I would call it, where you look at innovation cycles between 6 and 12 to 18 months, it's empty. No one owns that space or that gap, and no one seems to be willing to or able to take responsibility for actually doing it. So at the moment, that innovation cycle is not existing in terms of state finance in Europe, and we need to do something about that, and that is totally crucial. We need an adult politician to come into the room and say, we understand the problem, and at EU level we are willing to fix it.
But when it comes to, so you mentioned that we are preparing for cycles from 3 to 5 years from now on, but if we are borrowing from the technologies that Ukraine, or the experiences even from battlefields of Ukraine at present, do we not then run into the risk that potentially we are preparing for a warfare which may have already evolved past the point that we are preparing for?
Well, that's a good point. We need to learn from Ukraine galore, really much. And that's the reason why I'm a subscriber. I believe in what's called the Danish model version 3, where we basically try to make it very easy and attractive for Ukraine drone companies to move to Denmark. We should do that on a European scale. We are moving a lot of very big Ukrainian drone companies to Denmark. If we could do that at a European scale, that would help a lot, because we realize, of course, that the drone technology that works today will not work tomorrow or the day after. But the ecosystem that brings about innovation, that is what we need to learn from the Ukrainians, and they need to be in that room not only to teach us, but be part of it. So I'm a firm subscriber to the political position that we need Ukraine much more than Ukraine needs us, and especially when the war ends, or at least the hostilities end, we'll see two things. We'll see a plummeting of the demand for especially FPV drones and smaller drones, attack drones, which means that the very fragmented drone ecosystem will collapse and will have to be consolidated. That can either happen through state intervention, or by merger and acquisition by larger primes. And at the moment, what we see the Americans doing is running around in Ukraine, buying up IP or companies, small and medium-sized enterprises or startups, so as to either kill their technologies because the American technologies are way, way more expensive, or to actually own their IP and their innovation capabilities from those companies. So we need to pick up that task as well from two sides, state side and primes like Rheinmetall, BAE, etc. They need to be far more active in actually making merger and acquisition with Ukrainian companies.
And finally, one of the things that has happened in Poland in recent months that we've seen having a huge impact on how our strategies kind of progress when it comes to drones is the drone incursions that we've seen coming from Russia in September of last year, and subsequently the unfolding of the SAN system, which is this small anti-drone defense system on the eastern border. To what extent do you see this as a scalable project, considering that both EU and NATO officials have been discussing the potential for a so-called drone wall on the NATO's eastern flank? Do you see it as a viable possibility at present?
Yes, there's a huge potential for scaling it, obviously, but I don't think that it's not an answer to the whole problem, because not only do we want to stop the incursion of Russian drones, we also want to address the hybrid threats against our critical national infrastructure. So we need to do something at EU level on regulation so as to be able to put up effector packages, counter UAS systems, basically counter all systems, but mainly counter UAS systems on our larger pieces of infrastructure. And that regulation is not in place. So we have a both national responsibility but also an EU responsibility to actually address the regulation problem, to be able to scale our defensive structures working against Russian drone threats.
So a huge task ahead of us. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And thank you for watching from Paris for TVP World, Zuzanna, Jurek.